Stakeholder Register. A stakeholder register is a document that lists all the stakeholders who are involved in a project. It is an essential tool for project managers to identify and manage stakeholders effectively. The Stakeholder Register helps project managers in the following ways. 1. Identifying stakeholders. The Stakeholder Register helps project managers to identify all the stakeholders who are involved in the project. This includes both internal and external stakeholders who have a vested interest in the project's success. 2. Analyzing stakeholders. Once the stakeholders have been identified, the Stakeholder Register helps project managers to analyze their level of interest, power, and influence on the project. This information is crucial in developing strategies to engage and manage stakeholders effectively. 3. Communicating with stakeholders. The Stakeholder Register serves as a reference tool for project managers to communicate with stakeholders. It provides a clear and concise summary of the project's goals, objectives, and status, making it easy for stakeholders to stay informed and involved. 4. Managing stakeholder expectations. The Stakeholder Register helps project managers to manage stakeholder expectations by setting clear and realistic goals and objectives. It also helps to identify potential risks and develop strategies to mitigate them. In conclusion, the Stakeholder Register is an essential tool for project managers to identify, analyze, communicate with, and manage stakeholders effectively. It helps project managers to ensure that the project meets the needs of all stakeholders and is completed on time and within budget. What columns should be included in Stakeholders Register in project management? A stakeholder register is a document that lists all the stakeholders involved in a project, along with their contact information and details about their level of interest, power, and influence on the project. Here are some suggested columns to include in a stakeholder register. 1. Stakeholder name. The name of the stakeholder should be listed in the first column of the register. 2. Stakeholder contact information. This should include the stakeholder's contact information, such as their name, title, phone number, and email address. 3. Level of interest. The level of interest column should list the stakeholder's level of interest in the project. This can be high, medium, or low. 4. Level of power. The level of power column should list the stakeholder's level of power to influence the project. This can be high, medium, or low. 5. Level of influence. The level of influence column should list the stakeholder's level of influence on the project. This can be high, medium, or low. 6. Communication preferences. The communication preferences column should list how the stakeholder prefers to be communicated with, such as phone, email, or in-person meetings. 7. Risk management. The risk management column should list any potential risks to the stakeholder and how they can be mitigated. 8. Project status. The project status column should list the stakeholder's current status in the project, such as active, inactive, or complete. By including these columns in a stakeholder register, project managers can effectively identify, analyze, and manage stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle. When Stakeholder Register should update. A stakeholder register is a critical tool for project managers to identify and manage stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle. It should be updated regularly to ensure that the project manager has the most up-to-date information about stakeholders and their level of involvement in the project. Here are some scenarios when a stakeholder register should be updated. 1. When new stakeholders are identified. If new stakeholders are identified during the project, their information should be added to the stakeholder register. 2. When stakeholder interests change. If a stakeholder's interests in the project change, their information should be updated in the stakeholder register. 3. When stakeholder involvement changes. If a stakeholder's level of involvement in the project changes, their information should be updated in the stakeholder register. 4. When stakeholder expectations change. If a stakeholder's expectations for the project change, their information should be updated in the stakeholder register. 5. At project milestones. At key project milestones, such as the project kickoff, project review, and project completion. The stakeholder register should be reviewed and updated to reflect the current status of the project. 6. When stakeholder communication changes. If the frequency or method of communication with a stakeholder changes, their information should be updated in the stakeholder register. By regularly updating the stakeholder register, project managers can ensure that they have the most up-to-date information about stakeholders and their level of involvement in the project. This can help to manage stakeholder expectations, mitigate risks, and ensure that the project meets the needs of all stakeholders.